Hello everybody, I'm Complex to Live, and welcome to the Malediction Explanation Chapter 2. Hi Belle. My doggo is just walking by. Want to say hi to the fellows at their homes, Bella? Want to say hi? Alright, bye-bye. That's my crazy girl for you. How about that for an introduction, fellas? Anyway, when we start Malediction, we started all the way in Chapter 1, and I already covered a video on that, so if you have not seen that video, go check it out, because half of this may not make sense unless you see the first part of Malediction and complete all the stuff in that, because this is an interactive video series created by Stuffy Studios, which if you like this and you like some analog horror stuff, go check them out. You even subscribe maybe, it depends, whatever floats your boat. So the first video opens up with someone who looks like Hollow talking to you in an open field, but if you look at the character designs, it's actually our character's mother. It is a previous memory of him and his mother. We later cut to the next scene with us asleep in an unknown place. We then decide to wake up to where we find we are somewhere in a forest-like area. This makes me think when Chapter 1 ended with us and Hollow falling down and encountering the fallen humans. This is simply just the ending. We hit the bottom. All the other endings we got at the end of Chapter 1 are just secrets we find but not playing the game right. Because, remember, in my Part 1 video I showed and established that we are playing the Malediction game as in an arcade game. But something is wrong with this scene right here. We're just going to jump back into Chapter 2 again, okay? Just so I don't confuse you guys thinking I'm still recapping. Look at this forest scene and listen carefully. It's thunder. If we fell so far deeper below, not to mention we dropped down a hole deeper than the Nugget Cave when starting Malediction, how can we hear thunder? At this point, we're possibly near the crust of the actual Earth, if we are even on Earth. So therefore, we could not be hearing thunder. This shows that this place, this castle or void or whatever we just went through, has its own different environment. Either that or maybe we somehow fell up, which could also explain how in the freak our character survived all this. Anyway, back to the story. We're walking through the dark forest when we feel a tap on our shoulder. We turn around and we see a lonely spirit who looks like old Trollface and says they miss us, and this is the only place they can talk to us. Really? This really confuses me, making me think that this is either someone we know or someone that we know is controlling this spirit. I don't know, but they basically tell us we are officially in the underworld and they didn't give in to Odious' curse, and that's it. We then find a wandering spirit. That's all. We can either attack the spirit or not, either way it runs away in fear. On the other side of the spirit you find a door, which going through it, you meet Norman in a snowy terrain. We also run into Hollow while you are there, who says she was searching everywhere for you, implying that perhaps when they jumped through the door at the end of Chapter 1, they both ended up at different locations. But Norman also says that the castle is nowhere around here, so don't bother looking for it, implying the trap door we went through was a trap, leading us through a portal to throw us off track. Norman then says that now we all must go to confront the king, but in order to travel there, Norman will need the book. If you think about it, Norman has been giving off some suspicious vibes, but you give him the book. But, do you remember when I told you the wandering spirit did not matter? Well, if you attack the spirit, the option to attack Norman comes up when he asks for the book. If you attack him, he apologizes saying he should have went with you, making that whole segment pretty useless. After you give Norman the book, he uses it to sense the souls and where they came from. Using that, he pinpoints where the king is. That is when Norman creates a door to teleport them to the king, and we see rattles on a static screen with backwards text. Which, reversing the text, he says, "He's lying, you absolute moron, and I bet you're reversing this." Hey, wait a minute. That's when we realize we're supposed to be where the king is at, but instead we get teleported to this lady, which she explains that all of them helped kill her son, showing that Bobby was in fact her son. This lady then starts rambling about the ones who are cursed are blessed and bring everyone together, and all they had to do was consume. Eventually, Hollow attacks her, but this lady then just starts laughing at her. She then reveals that she is Queen Echo, the Empress of HE double pretzel sticks. The Queen then says that we will all die, until Norman stops her by saying that he killed her son, not them, and that he has actually been working with the King and Queen the whole time, because it was the only way for him not to be executed. For some reason, Norman would have been executed. I don't know why. Maybe because he wasn't cursed or something, I don't know. And then, when he made the door to lead to the king, he purposefully led us and Hollow here to be killed by the Queen. Also, I just love Hollow's reaction to this. Now it's time for a battle. When you attack Queen Echo, she tells you once more she can't be harmed by you and pulls out a spear. When you attack her again, Norman uses this opportunity to make another gateway to get out of here, but all three of them end up in this dark forest-like area similar to the first scene. That's when Hollow spots a man hiding on the other side of a distant wall, to which he introduces himself as the Collector. It's revealed this is another trick by Norman, for he brought us here to get our souls extracted and collected by the Collector. The irony. Something interesting about this Collector is he senses a vibrant soul inside Hollow, but nothing in us. We will get back to that later, possibly. We then get a decision to kill Norman, which if we do, he says he probably deserved it anyway. But weirdly enough, he does not die. He tells us that he has been coming here to the Collector to extract the souls from previous humans and is feeding his endless appetite, which reveals to us next that he is not in control of most of his actions, which leads to it being revealed that Norman is in fact cursed. Norman then transforms into this monstrous beast, which no matter what you can do, he kills you. You attack him, he glitches the system, and then with a faded cloak tells you there's no way for you to win. You'll eventually lose, showing you the end. If you use the book, he erases the book from existence, and the same thing happens when you're being forced to attack. But if you decide to do nothing instead of kill him, he fights himself, telling you to go before his urges kick back in. Hollow addressing that we don't know where to go, Norman gives us back the key to which we take. But then we are reset back to the beginning, not giving us a proper ending. If you go back to where you fight Queen Echo and she brings out her spear, if you decide to use the book on her, she tells you to stop and look behind you, or her disfigured face is looking at you. Says something like behind you when reversing audio, when her disfigured face appears, and finally jump scaring you, not giving you a proper the end ending, but still you die. However, if you show her the book before attacking her altogether, she stops, taking the book and crushes it, saying nothing will save you. That is when Norman shoots her, which prompts Queen Echo to stab him. Even though we learned earlier that Norman is cursed, the spear must be made from the remnant of cursed objects or something that kills cursed creatures. Norman then tells us he is dying, but can open a gateway for us to escape. We escape, but Queen Echo sabotages the gateway, leading us into a corrupted version of that memory from the beginning, with a demon-possessed version of your mother telling you to drink a potion to forget all this. With the obvious choice being don't take it. If you do take it, the ending shows you seeing a girl with wide eyes and blonde hair. You are holding a glass of liquid and don't remember anything about yourself, only your name. That's actually kind of sad. And folks, that is our second official ending. We also finally learn what Hollow looks like, which contradicts what Norman said in part 1, that we don't recognize anyone based on physical traits, showing that perhaps in this world, when your memories erased, you are brought into either another world or a new reality. But we all know to progress the story, you must refuse to drink, which then the game glitches and you end up in a weird city with techno music, which is coincidentally called Techno City. Once we spawn to this new world / city, we meet a robot named Steve, who says humans can be trusted here but monsters can't. He also glitches when telling you the name of the city the first time, implying that there has been some sort of computer system to not allow monsters in. It reminds me of PO3 from Inscription, if I'm being honest. Steve gives off some suggestive vibes since he calls you things like cutie pie and sweet honey bun, which gives me the feeling we should not trust this guy. Steve tells you he is your tour guide and companion in the city, which is asked if you want his assistance. If you tell him no, then he thinks you're just joking with him and confirms with you if it's a joke. If you tell him no, it's not a joke, he gets angry and tells you he needs you to agree in order to access Techno City, and if you disagree again, you'll regret it. Telling Steve no one final time leaves him self-destructing, killing both you and Steve, since Steve realizes his assistance isn't required. That gives us our third ending. At any point in this yes or no sequence, if you say yes, Steve is happy and gives you a binary contract to sign to get access to the city. Basically a terms and conditions. However, when we translate this binary into text, it translates to wasted your time. I see Stuffy has acknowledged the theorists. Now, back to this contract that is wasting our time. Even though a lot of people decided to sign the contract, if you wait long enough, a choice to not sign it comes up, which then prompts Steve to go into assault mode and have one of the best models in this whole game, with a red gun and a face that gives me Omega Flowey vibes. You can either dodge his bullet or attack him. Dodge him and he states the obvious that it's not that easy to dodge a gun, then shoots us. Fourth ending down, at least 10 more to go. If you attack him, he just flat out shoots you, but brings you back to life and allows you to attack him, only for it to do nothing and shoots you and kills you for real this time, giving us our fifth ending. So basically we sign the contract and go on our tour with Steve when we both hear a rumbling noise and see some sort of red substance on the ground. Out from the ground comes Rattles with Hollow as his hostage, since we somehow left her behind. I don't know how exactly. We can attack or do nothing. If we do nothing, it's obviously going to be a bad ending, with Rattles not being surprised by your actions and kills Hollow right in front of you. That is when Steve lights him up with an Uzi, which of course does nothing but gives us a few laughs. However, even though this leads to an interesting ending, it gives us a lot of lore, such as Rattles once had a family but was a disgrace in their eyes. He presumably killed them and put this permanent smile on his face where he says, "I am not the same pathetic joke I used to be. Now every day I can keep a smile on my face." It reminds me of Jeff the Killer a little bit, which is also involved in Stuffy Studios' other series, The Macabre Experiment. This whole monologue ends with Steve telling him that nobody gives a crap and lights him up again. Following up out of nowhere comes Queen Echo, who tells Rattles to leave. Being confused, Rattles eventually leaves. The Queen turns to you and gives you the book that she put back together and tells you to follow her, giving us the end screen in our sixth ending. This makes me think though, is this the same Queen? Because at the beginning she was cursed, and now she's back to normal, and puts the book back together with no explanation? Oh, she did it out of the kindness in her heart. Bullcrap! This is an entirely different person. It makes sense why the sudden change in mood is because that it's someone else. Perhaps a shapeshifter or a twin sister, but she's still evil. Or it may also just be the Queen in disguise. It worked with Norman, it can work for her. She most likely took you somewhere and killed you, because now thinking about it, she looks a lot like that lady from one of those secrets in chapter 1, who said, "Don't trust her." So instead you decided to attack Rattles, which prompts him to let go of Hollow, and you put all your strength into ripping up this dude's face. Eventually he finds it fun you're fighting back, but grabs hold of your face, and saying that you are useless as your parents, which obviously angers you. But soon as Rattles finishes talking, Steve pulls out the Glock and shoots him, and this prompts you to attack Rattles again, but this time cutting through his arm and cutting the backside of his head, with Hollow rooting for you to kill him, and my boy Hex, I mean Steve, just doing nothing in the back. That hit seemed to be fatal to Rattles because he went from blood red to reddish pink. Right as it seems he's about to pass out, however, the sun rises in Techno City, and Rattles seems to have a revelation and found some sort of page. And he states that one day he would want to go back to being his old self again, which today seems to be that day. Hollow then states the obvious that Rattles did kill a bunch of people, and ruin so many people's lives, so why would they let him live? Which Rattles tells them since he's cursed, he is not in control. This actually gives a very interesting point if he is trusting or not. If you kill him, you think it's over, but really it's not, leaving you with a seventh sad yet undetermined ending. Just give us an ending where us and Hollow live happily ever after already, Stuffy. Come on! Anyway, so you have no other choice now but to use the item he gave you, a page with the Malediction curse symbol. Using it gets Rattles back into his original form, which is a white version of him. Coincidentally, the same version we kept seeing in the gateways at the beginning of the game. Wait, if he's cursed, why is his mouth unchanged? Even though Rattles feels great now that he's uncursed, he tells you that you forgot one fatal fact. He told us all the way in Chapter 1, I believe, that he is too far gone. The curse has officially become a part of him. That answers my question about the mouth. This leaves the Hollow Gang mad at him for this, but then having a change of mood, determined to find Rattles' old self. This change of mood is unexpected and doesn't really make any sense, but whatever, I'll roll with it at this point. Hollow then proceeds to ask Rattles what his old life was like. The video ends with us seeing a flashback of Rattles being made fun of by his family and demanding to know why do we care so much about him, which allows him to run away. This kind of reminds me of the ending of the Omega Flowey boss. This game officially ends with a view back to that snowy area we met Norman at the start of the game, with the silhouette of a big man, most likely being Odious, talking about how he will find us and kill us because they murdered his son. He's also seemingly talking to Echo, for he calls the person he is talking to as his beautiful wife, which gives us our final and 8th ending. Honestly, this seems like the canon ending before heading into Chapter 3. Now that we have all the endings and supposed lore, we must now fill in the gaps. First off, Chapter 1 ends when we fell to the bottom of the castle after going through the door, and all those other endings with the fallen humans is just us casually going into insanity. However, it seems that the curse also affects the castle, for instead of going through the castle, they instead fall through it, and both you and Hollow get spawned in different locations, not to mention you probably went up instead of down, like how gravity actually works in real life. We get stuck at wandering through this dark forest, which we are told we are in HE double toothpicks, which we know we were already in the underworld, so the fact we are shown another layer of the underworld shows there are multiple layers to this place. Possibly. Or it's just a whole nother world, I don't know. Not a fact that helps anything, but still had to mention it. There's also the fact that the collector exists, which shows that if a human or creature dies, their soul can be collected and eaten by creatures that way. Honestly, there's not many loose ends I haven't covered besides these ones or the ones I included in the story. There's one other fact that I mentioned in the very first part that remains very overlooked, and that is the fact that it's all a game. None of it is actually real. In the ending to one video in Chapter 1, if you look very closely, there's one frame which shows a dark and abandoned arcade with only one game being lit up, which, if you look at the title closely, it's called Malediction. So even though we have a small timeline of events that happen to our main character, the real story is nothing. It's not real. This is just a game. Well, I could end it there. But there are a few other details that can be found in Stuffy Studios' community posts. Looking all the way back to when he started making posts, you may realize a few of his macabre drawings, and randomly beginning posts seem to have faces that look very similar to Rattles. The only thing I was able to find was this yellow animatronic, which I think's name is Toby, but I don't know if there's anything I can use to prove Rattles was someone like that in real life. I just thought it was a fun fact of inspiration. By the way, Toby's from his very first project, Sneaky Snack Bar, I think is what it was called. Anyways, that is the Malediction explanation, part 2. So remember, the life inside of a video game is never real. That's what I would say if Stuffy didn't make new content already. Chapter 0 came out, and surprisingly has a bunch of new content in the lore of Malediction itself. This one starts with some samples of early Malediction tests. It's basically some behind the scenes of how Malediction's evolved over the years. I guess it's just showing like how the early drafts looked versus the new drafts, and honestly it looks pretty good. Things get a little creepy, however, when this unknown looking man, presumably odious, and the Malediction symbol come into the picture, and for a brief frame there's a series of numbers, which makes me think of ciphers, and I was right. I put the number pattern into hexadecimal, which gave me a jumble of letters. But then, once I put these letters into ciphertext, it spells escape. But we already knew we had to escape from this game. Our last image is a picture of Rattles. The white version showing that the canon ending for Chapter 2 is confirmed to be the one where we try to save Rattles. Our only option is to attack him, which leads to you not hitting Rattles, but instead, you accidentally crack the screen, to which we see a creature lurking behind the screen. We finally see our worthy foe, who is Romstrian. I'm just going to say that since either Romston or with a 3, so Romstrian, deal with it. Who was the guy we saw earlier with the Malediction symbol. We can attack him or delete him. If we attack, we move on, but if we delete him enough times, he gets removed from the game and showing us a home screen for a computer. Even though it was confirmed Malediction is an arcade game, I'm guessing it was so lifelike that the game spread to modern day computers. After you delete Romstrian, he comes back as a virus, sounding like he is both crying and laughing and telling you that he told you to end the project, and that ending us will be more fun. And that is when we hear our player's name for the first time. Arthur. Now, we will get back to who Arthur is in a little while. If instead you decide to attack Romstrian, everything disappears and someone asks what was that sound, to which a figure comes into sight and it's none other than Rattles. Rattles is confused as to how you got down here, since you are a human, confirming with us that this is officially the first time Rattles has encountered a human, and tells us we either need a curse or he will eat us. He decides to eat us. The last piece of this video is the Malediction symbol telling us it's a game. None of these characters are real. They can't hurt you. It's all fake. Which, this is what I was talking about earlier. It's all just a game. This leads us into another video simply titled 5 Blanks. Poetry at its finest. This video takes us to the Judgment Hall from Undertale, and we see a delicious sandwich, which Stuffy hinted at earlier in one of his community posts from a while back. But, uh-oh, someone else wants this sandwich too! Everything then goes dark and the sandwich fades from entire existence, and we see a dark HD looking Rattles looking at us. Our only option is to escape. So, that is what we do. However, something is different about this video right off the bat. In the description is part of a news article telling us who Arthur is and what happened here. We hear that Arthur is the owner of a video game establishment, the creator of Malediction, to which many players have said the game seems almost sentient, for they all got different outcomes in the game. In response to this, Arthur says in an interview that's not witchcraft or any satanic game or anything, but instead a view of the fire pits below. And that, in Arthur's head, this place is filled with people who are just misunderstood, and the devil isn't a bad guy, he just doesn't know the pain others are going through, which I completely don't agree with. But anyway, as for the curse, this sentence is actually very true to society nowadays. Arthur says, nobody ever stops to see the other guy's point of view. Think about what it would be like to be in someone else's shoes. They're just seen as a monster, so that's what they become. Showing that the curse isn't just a virus, it's a sense of reflection among these souls. I will get back to this for my final analysis. As for the actual video, however, we're walking down a narrow path and find that HD beast following us. Eventually it tries to confront and jump scare us, but to no success, for we continue on, where a brown thing looking a lot like Norman's cloak tells us to fight it, and don't hide ourselves away. Ending Malediction Chapter 0. Now, for my final analysis. Honestly, I'm surprised this series didn't have any complicated lore. Instead, it decides to focus more on the journey and not the hidden lore. Let me explain. I already explained the whole journey of our unnamed protagonist and Hollow in the canon endings, but what does it mean? What is the purpose? Well, the answer is, It's about redemption. Malediction actually means a curse, but a curse on what? We can answer this question by looking at Arthur himself. He explains the reason he made this game was to demonstrate how the underworld may be like. But really, I think he's talking about himself. All of these characters and conflicts, or they all had to do with Arthur's mental state. We see early on with Renstrian that he tells us we should have stopped and shouldn't have gone through with making this game. Even though many assume the co-workers are trapped in the game, like we haven't seen that before. But honestly, I think the curse was right. It's all a game. It's all fake. But fake on a physical point, not a mental point. When Renstrian says this to Arthur, I think he's referring to the friendship between Arthur and many others. Arthur most likely didn't do all this on his own, but this conversation could be referring to Arthur's ego. He's arrogant. He most likely pushed everyone away. This is what the protagonist is. Our character is an outsider with only one person by his side he feels like he can trust, which is represented through Hollow. But even at the end of Escape, this brown thing tells us to fight this curse, showing that there's someone there for him. God? A friend? I don't know exactly. I'm hoping God, or a close friend. But we see the rest of the characters representing different sides of Arthur. Steve represents his love for technology, abstractness, and common logic in games, and most importantly, humor. Hollow represents that friend that sticks by you, but still has their own feelings and logic. Queen Echo could possibly be heartbreak, out of all things, since Stuffy made a post about her looking like a heart on Valentine's Day, but also when she stabs Norman, that signifies after Norman betrayed us, he took the spear to the chest for us, an act of pure love. And getting stabbed is both physical and emotional heartbreak. And since she can stand the curse, actually boosts my point. But the most curious of all is Rattles. Rattles is Arthur's true personality, wanting more, getting greedy and hateful towards everyone. But deep down, he wants to be free from this curse. He wants to live freely and normally again. But that gets us to our final point. What is the curse? Well, it's quite simple, actually. It's what all of us have but want more of sometimes. Selfishness and greed. As Arthur said in the interview, no one stops to see the other guy's point of view, and they are seen as a monster, and that is what they become. Throughout the story, we see this. Everyone is every man for himself. Selfish, greedy, hypocrites. All of these things can actually spread very fast, not only in the underworld, but in society and reality itself. And that is the true conflict and story of Malediction. The story of redemption through Arthur. A man who grows bitter after going from arcade games to controversial yet successful PC games, only for him to slowly realize the curse he created for this game was really a part of him all along. And that, my friends, is the real story to Malediction. It shows that not only, wow, I was actually not expecting this to be actually emotional. See, it's not portraying just a story within a game, because it acknowledges that this is just a game. It's not anything else. No one's trapped in the game. Nothing is paranormal about the game. It's just simple, directions, simple programming. But the story that goes into the game is what the key is here. And Stuffy realizes that. At least I hope so. I hope it's not that whole thing with people trapped in games. That would just ruin this whole series. But, yeah, that is the whole point to Malediction. It's redemption from a common curse, especially a curse slash, emotion that society deals with so much today. A lot of us can be selfish sometimes. A lot of us can be greedy. And we don't need that. We do not need that into the world. We need to fight that. We need to be content. We need to be thankful. And we also need to help other people and see their perspective on stuff and opinions. You hear that, Reddit? Here's someone's opinion. And I'm also talking to you, Twitter. So, take it or leave it. I refuse to see the most obvious direction. I want to see it as really abstract. That's my point of view on Malediction. It's not about the game itself. It's about the message of the game. And that, my friends, is Malediction Explanation Part 2. If any of you guys actually are on a friendship level with Stuffy, can you please tell him to check this out if you like this? I hope you guys enjoyed this. And, yep, I think I'm actually going to get used to doing these half-time videos, these half-an-hour videos. You know, because I feel like I get more stuff in than the shorter ones. Well, looks like that's about as much time as I'm going to have tonight. Yes, I'm recording this at night. As I am complex to live, this has been the analysis on Malediction. And I will see you guys on the other side. Bye-bye!